When you're in your mid-20s, you really only have three options.
Get married.
Get a master's.
Or run a marathon.
Hi, my name is Francis.
And I'm Brian.
And welcome to the second episode of the Zone 2 podcast,
where we explore the world of running and endurance sports and talk about our backgrounds in running. So if you're here to listen to us talk about running, but let's be honest, we were probably going to tell you about it anyways. Francis, you're pretty fast, but I know you want to get faster.
I'm trying.
And an important part of getting faster is training. So how about you tell me a little bit about your last week of training? How's it been going?
Yeah, so my past week has been a little up and down, to be completely honest. 2 weeks ago, I had the flu, which put me out of commission for almost an entire week. And I only got about 7 miles in when I was sick. And then I had a week back, clocked some decent mileage, went, over 50 miles for that week. Did my speed workout last week, hit my splits, was really happy about that. But the following day, I started to have some pain just above my ankle, sort of in my shins. It might be shin splints.
Oh,
perhaps?
He said the S.
Which I think is kind of funny because literally in the last episode, I said up until this point, I haven't gotten injured, and then literally got injured 2 days later.
Yeah. And, well, he knocked on wood, but it's important to note that this desk that
it's made of a composite. It's a faux wood covered like particle board.
Yeah, and because it's a composite and there's a laminate on top, so even though Francis knocked on the composite wood, it's probably important to note that he didn't directly knock on the wood. He was knocking on the laminate.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I went wrong. So I had to cut a few runs short, which was a little disappointing.
Embarrassing, yeah.
I'm taking it a bit easy for now. So kind of just hoping it's muscle soreness, nothing skeletal, nothing too serious. I don't think it is. I'm still able to walk around. I did do a longer run on Friday that felt okay. But again, I did have to cut it short and I was feeling a little bit of pain during it. So just kind of keeping an eye on it. I've talked to my coach. I've talked to my sisters who are both doctors. They're not super worried about it at the moment. So I'm not going to be super worried about it. I'm just going to try to do what I can to help it get better as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my training.
Yeah, I hope you stop being in pain because that's no fun.
No, it's not. I had an okay week. How was your week?
I had a good week, Francis. Thanks for asking. I think a great piece of advice that I was given when I started training for the first marathon was to be flexible. Obviously, I have a training schedule that I'm following, but I'm also finding that it's really important for me to find time for my runs around my schedule and work and school and life that's happening rather than structuring the rest of my life around when I have to get my runs in. So great example, I worked 2 12-hour shifts over the weekend this last weekend. Didn't have time, therefore, over the weekend to do my long run. So I snuck it in on Friday. I had an exam in the morning on Friday, so had to squeeze it in a little bit. I was supposed to do 16 on the schedule. I ended up doing 12. But I took the opportunity of a bit of a shorter long run than what was scheduled to push myself a little bit and kind of do a pace check-in just to see where I was at. So I took the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebels I was talking about last week for the longest run I've done with them, and they felt really good.
Oh, good.
I was really surprised, actually. I was aiming for a tempo, which usually for training purposes, I'm aiming for a 7-minute per mile pace. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going between 640 to 650 for about a 10K of the 12 miles. Wow. And
that's really good.
It felt really good. And that also is affirming that all this training that I've been doing and the time that I've been spending on my feet is helping make me faster. And I don't know, it felt good.
That's a good testament to where your fitness is at. And clearly seeing something like that is that's a huge confidence boost as well. So, I'm jealous of you.
Oh, stop it, Francis.
That sounds like a really good week. So here's to many more and staying injury free. So we are actually joined by a very special guest.
Sitting across from Francis and I right now is our dear friend, Nike women's running ambassador, 2-time marathoner, and professionally certified yapper, Cate Schultz. I think she has a license to yap.
Thanks for having me on, guys. So excited to be here. Always excited to yap.
I guess we can probably just get started with some of our questions and our burning questions. I feel like we know you pretty well, but one of the things that I've always wondered, because you seem like running has always been a part of your life, but how did you first get into running in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good first question. I've actually not always been into running. This is only my 3rd year really running. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and my freshman year, I took a class with this girl named Addie. Shout out Addie. I love you if you're listening to this. And Addie was like, Cate, I love the running club people. I think you would really vibe with them. And I was like, that's great. I don't know how to run. And she was like, well, what if you just join? Like, you're a pretty like active, happy person. Like, why don't you join? Hence the yapping, right? So I came to a practice and I would run like 2 miles with them, like an 8:30 pace, and then be like, oh my gosh, I gotta tap out. And I would turn around and be like, bye guys, and like quietly exit and put in Rihanna and like walk home until I could, not do that anymore and kind of run more normally. And I got into it and then sort of like got peer pressure to sign up for a 10-mile race, which was like a really big thing. It's called the Tar Heel 10 miler. And so I trained for that and I would start like pushing myself to run farther. And I think I just kind of got hooked. Like, I love the social aspect of running, but I also end up doing a lot of my runs alone. And I think that the like mental clarity I get after a run is a really like special and unique thing to me. And I think it's just a great outlet. So I've got a lot more into running since then. I signed up for like a half marathon my sophomore year. And I did that, which was super fun, on the Tobacco Trail, which is like a great place if you're from North Carolina. And then I signed up for a marathon my senior year, and I ran that last year, which was also on the Tobacco Trail. And then I just ran the Philly Marathon in November, and now I am training for the Boston Marathon. So kind of dove in head first a little bit.
Well, that's awesome, Cate. I think that's a testament to how, I guess, similar to Francis and I's experience, how easy it is to get into running, how welcoming the community is. And even as a beginner, if you're getting new to it and building up your fitness, or even coming from no running experience at all, how willing and enthusiastic everybody is to welcome you into it. That's awesome. So you just mentioned that you're training for the Boston Marathon. You're running Boston as a qualified runner. You ran Philly with a time of 3:07. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's quite impressive.
Thank you.
So talk us through a little bit about how training is going for Boston, if you have any goals for the race, or if you're just running it to have fun, and maybe just talk us through what a typical week of training looks like for you.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really a privilege that I'm able to run Boston. It was sort of like a secondary goal. My dad, I remember when I ran my first marathon in March, was like, your first goal should be to finish. Your second goal should be to finish with dignity, which he meant like not crawling across the finish line, I guess. But I guess like a goal I had was to see if I could run fast enough. Like, my long runs went really well in training to qualify for Boston. Once I knew, like last February, this time basically, that I was going to be moving after I graduated to Boston, I thought it'd be like a really good way to ring in my first year post-grad and like in a new city. And my goal is to enjoy it. I think that it's really interesting because I got into running just as a social outlet, and then I'm a very like competitive person, I think, and I got very competitive with myself about it. And I think, so I guess sort of not running related, but I'm getting my PhD in child psychology right now, and a lot of my research in the past has been about play and how play helps children's mental health. And I actually wrote my PhD application, like, personal statement. Part of it was about how running is like my personal playtime, and how like we lose touch with our inner child, and like we don't really make opportunities to play in our life, and play is looked at as like a reward for work, but instead like it shouldn't be that like you work to play. It's like play is an inherently important part of life and like of my worldview. And so I think it's very easy when you get in this like competitive mindset, or if you're training for a big race and you have lofty goals, to like forget about that. And so I'm trying, I think, this training cycle to be like, Boston's is like, my friend Emma always says, like, the race is a celebration of the training, not the other way around. Like, you're not training just to have the race. So I think I'm trying to embrace that mindset, and I'm really excited to like see everyone I know on the course, see you guys like cheering on. So I think my goal is to be present in the moment. I want to finish enough that I'm not like having an awful time, so I'm trying to do more hills. But I think that, yeah, my goal is to enjoy the race. I'm also running Chicago in the fall. I think that one is like notably a fast course, and so maybe I would strive for a little bit of a PR at that one. But for Boston, I just want to enjoy it. And For a typical week right now, an interesting thing that kind of goes into, I think, what we'll talk about a little bit later, but I was actually, like, when I was training for my first marathon, told by, like, a 2:30 marathoning guy that if your body and mind can handle it, a lot of people find it both, like, physically and mentally easier when you're training for a marathon to run higher mileage and, like, do longer long runs than, like, what's typically prescribed, especially on, like, an intro plan. Because that can be really daunting. Obviously, you don't want to tell someone who's a new runner, like, you have to be running over X number of miles. And also, it doesn't work for a lot of people's bodies. So I think that that's an important thing to note too. But for me, like, I think I was a lot less stressed running the marathon because I had done, like, multiple 20-mile runs beforehand. And I did that in training for Philly too. So I am doing that now. I ran 20 miles, most of which was, like, on the Boston course, which was really cool, last Friday. Heartbreak Hill wasn't as brutal as the Comav Hills, like, before Heartbreak Hill, I actually felt like. But yeah, so a typical week looks like 2 to 3 social runs a week, 1 big whammy long run, and then a bagel run that's only like 3 to 4 miles is probably one of my favorite runs a week. It's literally bagel yap is what we call it. And it's like my easiest run, but it's also probably like the most enjoyable. It's always like the sunrise. It's downtown. I like bike there and bike back and have a really good bagel afterwards. So a typical week look like that. I'm trying to stretch more and I'm trying to maybe do a little strength training.
Yeah, and I feel like injury prevention is so important because you're doing like how many miles each week?
Yeah, right now I'm doing like 60 to 70.
So you are an incredibly fast athlete and you kind of, as like a Nike ambassador, you exist in this space of like a hobbyist sport, but then also like a professional sport. And I think you have like a really interesting perspective too, as like a female runner and a female athlete. So my question is like, what has your experience been in like an organized sport? Because organized sports tend to prioritize men's teams in terms of like coverage and publicity. And do you think running approaches that slightly differently than other sports? Or, you know, if running doesn't approach it differently, like, do you see that changing anytime soon?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I do think that running compared to some other sports is probably a little bit better. I don't know, because I've never been like a real professional athlete, what other people's experiences in that space have been. But I do know that like from going to a huge sports school, like everyone knows that UNC Chapel Hill is a major powerhouse, especially for like basketball. And I loved going to basketball games, but it was a really competitive lottery system for the boys' games and barely filled up for most of the girls' games unless it was like a rivalry with Duke or something like that. And I think that that's really challenging because those athletes are pushing themselves just as much as the boys, but they're never going to get as much coverage as them, despite like lots of efforts from the female athletes in that community. I think running, there's more of like an acknowledgement of different standards. And so like records, this emphasis on like records, like different records being broken. Like I think that that offers a little bit more of an opportunity for equal coverage, but it shouldn't be that way. Like it should be that female sports are esteemed at the same level as men's. I think for my personal experience, I found that like Boston is full of some badass fast women. Like it's been really cool to train with people who, like, I regularly run with one of my friends who just ran in the fall, like a sub 3-hour marathon. And like, that's awesome. Like, I think it's really empowering to talk to girls who aren't afraid to run fast, and not afraid to like run high mileage and like kind of like be in the league, I guess, of like what guys think of as like more of like the high mileage, like type stuff. Like, I think that's something that I've noticed that people comment on more. Or I guess like one thing that was interesting is like recently it's come up that I'm running Boston, but I've had like 3 different experiences with guys where they're like, what charity? And you're like, oh, like I'm actually like, it gets like this little like awkward moment. And I don't know if it's just like in general people are thinking it's for charity, but I guess it's just anecdotally like it's only happened when I've talked to guys. It's never happened when I've talked to girls. And so prompts like a very awkward conversation because you have to be like, oh, actually, like, no, I'm just like paying to race myself. Like, I think it'll be a really fun experience. They're like, oh, so you qualified. And then you know, get into that conversation. One of the biggest challenges as a female runner specifically is like, I'm a huge early bird. I like ideally on not weekends, go to bed by 10. And I like don't mind waking up early. I love seeing the sunrise. Like I think that's one of my favorite parts of running. But if you see the sunrise on a run, like you're going to be running in the dark for a little while. And like my mom obviously is a nervous person when her 22-year-old daughter is like running alone in a city in the dark. And it's like that's not an ungrounded fear. And I think that like when things happen in the news, that really gets to me because I think that that's something that's just like guys definitely like have to consider their own safety, obviously, but not to the same extent, which I think is hard because it's not something that's like really talked about a ton in terms of like your athletic goals or anything like that. But it's something that I've definitely noticed. So I think that's like a unique struggle to female runners who want to run in the dark. But like I just remember one of the coolest races I've ever done was the Blue Ridge Relay, and I had like an awesome team. And it's when you like go through the Blue Ridge Mountains and it's an overnight race. But I like 2 of my relay legs were like in the mountains at 11 p.m. and then one was at 3 a.m. And I had this thought during both of them, like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done, but I'm never, ever going to be able to do this in any other context because, like, everyone knows where I am and, like, it's safe in that way. Like, there's someone coming to get you or whatever. I just have to be, like, more cognizant of, and sometimes I definitely, like, ignore out of almost, like, anger or frustration with the situation. But, like, I ran before, I didn't want to run in 20 degrees on Saturday during my long run, so I ran at, like, 5:30 because I had a 9:30 a.m. class, but I was doing 20 miles and like was hyper aware of how dark it was and like that I was on like the side of a road and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, Kate, I appreciate you sharing your experience. I think that's something that a lot of people running in the city especially have probably encountered. Running in the morning, like if you're going out in the dark, it's probably scary going out by yourself. And I think what's cool about Boston is because there is such a community around running in the city, and there's so many people that do go run, that I know that there's a lot of groups and clubs and social runs that go with the sole purpose to go out together. So you're not running by yourself, you're going with people, it's safer. And it's sad that that's a consideration that you have to make. But like I have friends who live in the South End who made a run club on Strava called Scared Girl Run Club.
I've heard about this, yeah.
And they made it for the sole purpose of they were going running in Boston in the winter when the sun's setting at like 3:30 p.m., but they still had to go for runs after work and it's dark and they didn't want to go running by themselves. So they made the run club for the sole purpose of having people to go run with and to do it safely. So it's sad that that's a consideration I think that you have to make, but I'm glad that you're being safe, and I'm glad that you have people that you can go running with as well. So Kate, you were mentioning before how a lot of other sports are kind of segregated in terms of their attendance, where you have men's sports that are sold out and then women's sports where they struggle to sell out games. Something that I've noticed that I think is really cool about Boston is how gung-ho, especially this college or young adult age group, is about women's sports. A couple weeks ago, I went to the Beanpot Championships, the Women's Beanpot Championships. Northeastern won in the championship at TD Garden. The game broke the attendance record for women's hockey in New England history. And I think it was so cool.
Awesome.
It was awesome, and it was so cool to be a part of that and to really feel the energy that a city like Boston brings around women's sports, to the point that I feel and I hope, and I think it's something we can all aspire to, is that it's not about men's or women's sports, it's just sports. And there's so many incredible athletes in Boston. I'm just happy to be a part of it and be here supporting people.
I totally agree, and I think that's such a cool experience. And I think that something interesting, since you guys are both training for marathons, I've noticed in, the sample size of 2 that I've done, that it's really cool because everyone's just running. You're a runner. Like, there's the dude who carries the American flag, and then, like, you've heard of all these crazy records, like, people who juggle while running a marathon, but, like, everyone's just out there doing the same, hopefully, 26.2 miles. It was so funny because the first marathon I did, it was literally in a trail in North Carolina. There was 3,000 people, and I was like, this is huge. This is crazy. There are so many fans. There were like 5 miles where I think I saw 3 people. And one of them was my friend. But Philly, the streets of Philadelphia were lined. Like, it was so cool. The encouragement was there. And you're just running and you feel like, my friend Nicole, I remember, told me before my first marathon that she got really emotional and like teary at the start line because she was like, this is just such a cool like human experience to all be in this together, and you all like went on different journeys but put in so much time and effort to get there. And I think that that's very much like an equity thing in running. Like, obviously there's lots of inequities in running, just like any other sport. But I think the idea of just like everyone's doing this thing that's really important to them for all sorts of different reasons. And I think that's something really special that I noticed in both marathons. It's just like everyone's cheering because everyone's just like happy of this like cool experience that we all get to have as little joyful humans. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone who's running a marathon is a runner. It's not like different genders or different identities are running different races. Everyone's running the same race. And I think that's so cool. And that's something I've noticed too about Heartbreak. And obviously they're more social runs. It's a club run, but Heartbreak will do organized track workouts a couple days a week.
Yeah.
And it is just the track workout. There's no segregation. You can split up into pace groups, but the pace groups have anybody can join any pace group, and it's not segregated, and everyone runs together and everyone does the workout together, and it's not about gender, it's not about identity, it's just everyone's there together working together towards common goals, and there's such a strong community around running.
And I would say, like, especially right now, running is definitely having a moment, and you're not just seeing that in like the pop culture, but also like in the companies themselves. Like, you're seeing a lot of outreach with different running brands, shoe companies, and that sort of thing to bring in new talent and just get people interested in the sport in general. And speaking of that, actually, Cate, you are a Nike ambassador. How the heck did that happen?
Yeah, so I thought it would be good when I first moved to Boston in August to join a run club, because I actually lived in Denmark for the summer. Super cool experience, and they're huge into run clubs, and so that was an awesome way to meet people while I was living there. So I thought, Boston, running city, I'll just try them out, sort of like sample, see what vibes I enjoy, what people I enjoy. And so I came to the Heartbreak MIT track like 6:30 a.m. on Tuesdays, and I went like 3 weeks in a row because I really liked the people. I thought it was a cool, interesting vibe, and it was challenging in a positive way, as Brian was saying earlier. But one day, this guy came up to our group. We were in the orange group, and he said, "Is anyone here a student?" And I said, "I'm a student." And Brian said, "I'm a student." He said, "I'm looking for females." And so then we're looking at him like, okay, why? Because I didn't know his background. I didn't know that he worked for Nike. He said, "Where do you go to school?" And I said, "Oh, I just started my PhD at Boston College." And he said, "Oh, PhD, how old are you?" And I said, 22. I just turned 22. And he said, "Oh, okay, great. We are looking for 20 to 24-year-old women for our new Women's Nike Running Ambassador campaign. Can't make any promises, but I could definitely submit your information if you're interested. Like, let's chat." And so I texted with him more. And then about 2 months passed where Brian was like, have they called? No. I had to be like, no. And then they did. In October, I got an email being like, "Congratulations, you have made it to the Zoom interview round. Like, can we schedule a Zoom interview? And here's the time difference," because they're based out of, like, their agency is based out of LA. I had an amazing call with this really cool woman and talked about running and why I love it, and why I've found like such a community in this awesome city through it. And I got an email saying, "Congratulations, here's a contract." And so now I am part of the first cohort of Nike Women's Running Ambassadors. So we're students in different cities, and all have a passion for running in different ways. And so I think it's interesting because we're in such a critical time, I think, in the era of social media. Like, everyone talks about influencers, and you definitely want to make sure you're promoting the right ideals when you're influencing people, right? And so I think the whole goal that Nike has with this is running can be such a positive outlet, and it can be socially, it can be independently, it's good for your health. And so the idea is to empower women to run through influencing and through those things. Obviously, the gear and stuff like that is really nice, but I think the core message behind it is that girls can and should run and feel supported and empowered by other girls to do so. So it's been a really cool experience so far to be a part of that. And also, the shoes are really nice.
Do you think that being an ambassador for Nike Women's Running has changed your approach to the running that you're doing, or do you still think you're in it for the same reasons?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. To be totally transparent, I think it's definitely made me think of it as a bigger section of my life. I think just because it takes up a lot of time. It's something that's always been really important to me. But then having like a cool Nike poster that says my name on my wall, like obviously gives it a feeling of being even more of an impactful piece of my life. And I think that it's hard because you want to balance it, because I want to be doing it, as you were saying, like for those like joyful, playful reasons still. And like the gear is super helpful. I've been especially battling the Boston cold, and so like having some thicker jackets and stuff that are waterproof. Like they have these little waterproof shoes that Nike sent, and they're not like super fast race shoes or anything like that. But I think one thing that I was thinking about on Sunday that was super cool was it snowed a ton here in Boston. I think it was like over 4 inches. I was like, oh, like I don't even know if I can run in this. And then I was like, but it's kind of beautiful, and I have this time allotted that I thought I was going to run, and I have these waterproof shoes so my feet won't be sopping wet. And so I literally, I mean, I don't even know if you could call it a run. I just kind of bounced around Fresh Pond. I sort of like was jumping up and down in circles, but I saw a whopping 9 dogs in sweaters. Yeah, I saw kids sledding. I saw so many amazing things, and it kind of reminded me of like, this is supposed to be so fun, and I'm grateful for a company that like has products that allow us to do that, obviously. But I do think, to answer your question, like it made me, I think, take it a little bit more seriously, but also has provided me with a platform where I think that if I'm posting things, it reminds me to like stretch or like show that I'm fueling properly as a female athlete and stuff like that, which I think are important things to show on social media too.
So of all the shoes that you've tried on from Nike, which ones stick out to you as your favorite?
Definitely the Vaporflies. They got some sort of like magic dust in them. I didn't believe people when they said the carbon plate makes a difference. I was like, okay, that like it's still a shoe. But fun fact, so I'm from Maryland, and I went home for a few days, and then I went to Philly where my sister lives for the Philly Marathon with my mom, and my parents played catch with the Vaporflies because they were like, oh my God, it's so light. It's so light. Like they couldn't believe it. And they really make you feel fast. I mean, there's all sorts of technology that goes into them that I don't fully understand, but they're definitely my favorite ones. But they're not, you don't go on a run with 2 of my favorite people in Boston, you guys.
Stop.
On the Charles, like wearing Vaporflies. Like I think that would be a little bit, I don't know, cringy. Problematic. I would get some head turns by the other Boston runners, or they would think that you guys are just like infinitely faster than me, and I'm just like holding on for dear life.
That's the only option you have to keep up with Francis and I.
Yeah, it's like this or bust.
Yeah, we're out for a zone 2 run, and Kate's over here in her Vaporflies trying to keep up with us.
So the Vaporflies are obviously like a super cool shoe. But besides shoes, what is one piece of gear that's really stuck out to you that Nike sent you?
I would say the most useful, like the one I've used the most in the last 2 months of Boston winter running, is this like thin windbreaker jacket. And I put it over, it's like depending on what degree below freezing of the tens it's in, there's like that many layers underneath it. So like if it's 20 degrees, I'm doing like base layer, hoodie, then this jacket. So this jacket's getting a lot of use. I think Boston weather is weird for dressing, because my friend and I were just talking about this morning, that there was one run we went on that was like in the 20s a few weeks ago, and it was real feel 5 because it was so windy, and it was awful. Like we were both so cold we could barely talk. Our faces were frozen, and it's really hard to yap with a frozen face. So that was a tough morning for both of us. But I think that like in general, I don't have a perfect system, but I know what's worked in the past.
Would you say that the wind adds a factor or adds a challenge factor to running in Boston that other cities just don't have?
I think that, yeah, the wind definitely adds a challenging factor. But I heard our friend Anthony is like actually advocating against the wind and going to make some actionable changes with Boston legislators. So, yeah.
Anthony, if you're listening, we are all eagerly awaiting what scientific breakthroughs you come to turn off the wind in Boston.
Yeah, he posted a couple things on his Strava. I saw some articles that he had found about getting rid of the wind.
Yeah, he did some research. I don't know at what level they're working on that. If that's some.
I think he's at the screenshot level right now.
Okay,
where he screenshots articles and headlines and posts on Strava.
I heard that's an important first step.
It's like a lit review.
Well, I mean, based on how social media has kind of gone recently, he's basically an expert on the topic then. So, Kate, you mentioned before the wind, the cold. Obviously, Boston has some harsh weather conditions. When you're training for a race, you're committed to running regardless of what the weather is. So how do you hype yourself up to get outside and go for a run when you really don't feel like going?
I think it totally depends on the day. I think being kind to yourself is important. It's a good reminder for all of us. Like, if it's below 10 degrees, you might have to go on a treadmill, I'm realizing.
No, I don't want to go on the treadmill.
I know, and time passes infinitely slowly on a treadmill. But on the days where you have to go on a treadmill or the wind's blowing against you and you don't think that you can mentally handle it, I have found that I will change. I'm a big music listener when I run, when I'm not yapping. And I actually actively refuse to run in silence. I don't think I've run more. I was talking to someone about this recently, more than 10 miles ever in silence, total. So, which is pretty crazy statistic. But I will blast some rap music, especially like some rap music that I like never would normally listen to, like Cardi B's coming out. Like, I was just listening to like a lot of Doechii on the way back from a windy run. From actually, like, we went to the Reggie Lewis Center, which is like where we've been doing our indoor heartbreak workouts, and there was like a really windy way on the way home, and I listened to Doechii and I was like, I'm already home, like, this is great.
Okay, so you listen to a lot of like super intense music. Do you have like a specific hype song that gets you like ready for a race?
It totally changes. I would say That's So True by Gracie Abrams has been a favorite as of this year. Birds of a Feather was actually my most listened to Spotify song, and that one's just like I'm romanticizing my life while I'm running type vibe. But sometimes to make the legs move during the marathon, Nicole, if you're listening, La Mama de la Mama, if you've never listened to that song while running, you're gonna run really fast. You're gonna run really fast.
So, Kate, before you go, I know you mentioned Boston is coming up, obviously, April 21st this year. You mentioned running Chicago in the fall. I know you also have some cool race through Nike that you're going to be running. I was just wondering if you could share what that race is and tell us a little bit more about it.
Actually, technically, my first race before Boston is for spring break. I'm going to Portugal and reconnecting with 15 Danes that I became friends with in a running club over the summer, and we're all running the Portugal Lisbon half marathon. So that'll be a good like training boost in a cool place, probably a little warmer than Boston. But the big Nike race is the Nike After Dark run. I believe it's June 7th in Los Angeles, and I'm super excited. They just mailed me a headlamp, so I'm going to be super safe out there. I'm going to be super shiny, but I also am just beyond excited. And one of my friends from college goes, she's doing a nutrition master's at UT Austin, and she's also a Nike Women's Running Ambassador. And so Lily and I are super excited to be running it together and have our girlhood reconnection running moment in June. So yeah, I'm really pumped for that.
Could we get Lily on the pod to talk about nutrition?
Yeah, we could absolutely get Lily on the pod.
Francis, if you can't tell, Francis is pretty desperate to get people on the pod. We've had a lot of no's.
Well, I just haven't been asking people, and then I was like, oh, well, you need to have guests.
Yeah, well, we were kind of brainstorming topics of intrigue, I would say, and nutrition is something I know we've talked about. I think in episode 1, I briefly mentioned milk. I love milk, big milk, raw milk. No, don't drink that.
I would say one thing on the topic of nutrition, and Lily can speak better to it than I can, but 2 Christmases ago, I got Run Fast, Eat Slow, the Shailene Flanagan cookbook for Christmas. And it is super good. And it talks about a lot of the unique nutrition challenges that female athletes often face. But it also just for runners in general. That's where I got the superhero muffin recipe that I love. And my boyfriend hates the fact that there's zucchini in it until you try it, and then it's really good. So those are definitely a top training fuel snack that I've been doing lately.
So that's Run Fast, Eat Slow?
Yeah, that's what Shailene says we have to do, and she's pretty good at running, so I would listen to her.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like something I'm going to have to invest in. Well, Kate, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Brian and myself. I learned a lot. I don't know about you, Brian.
I learned so much, Francis. My brain simply cannot hold all the information that I've learned today.
So, Kate, I guess you probably have to run off to do whatever it is you have to do next. Probably run 1,000 miles by tomorrow morning or something.
I think I'm going to bike home and go to sleep.
That sounds amazing. All right. Well, thanks for coming on the pod. And we'll be seeing you probably in the next couple days running around Boston at some point. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much for having me and for welcoming me to Boston.
Thank you guys so much for listening again. And next week, you can come back for episode 3, where we're going to have Francis's friend Ted on the pod with us. Ted, who's responsible. He can be blamed for Francis getting into running.
Yeah, it's this guy's fault. I've got shin splints now.
Yeah. So, Ted, if you're listening, we know what you did. You made Francis run.
Here's my fun fact for the week, actually. Did you know that honey never goes bad? Ever.
No, I don't believe you.
It doesn't. They found edible honey in King Tut's tomb that was over 3,000 years old.